Aspects of infant mental health span eras, COVID notwithstanding. Their relevance becomes only that much more sharply delineated because of the COVID situation. Therefore, I'm not going to use the COVID lens to speak to you guys today. Amit Jha, who's listening in, is a qualified psychiatrist from Nepal, and he is on deputation to work with us for 3 months to his DM. And Amit, interestingly, had done a seminar a while ago for the Department of Infant Mental Health. I'm saying this for a particular reason. Amit had some very interesting information. And here is what I would like to start with. On the one hand, you have all the old cultural dimensions globally relevant of infant mental health, starting with Anna Freud and her analytic theory to include the influence of emotional development in childhood, to Erickson, who spoke about healthy childhood across various age groups, to Bowlby, who spoke about attachment theory, to Ainsworth, who noted sensitive and consistent caregiving in attachment relationship, down to Winnicott, who spoke literally about holding the child both physically and within the mind. But the term infant mental health was first coined by Selma Freiberg in the 1970s as part of her child development project. And all the initial work on child mental health really came from parenting and cultural differences and global differences in parenting and parent-child relationship and so on. And interestingly, Amit's presentation mentioned all this somewhere towards a third of his presentation. Interestingly, what he spoke about started with epigenetics and gene methylation. Now, that's the spectrum to which infant mental health has grown, because adverse childhood experiences are the new epidemic, even before COVID hit. And the impact that adverse childhood experiences has on issues of methylation and the epigenetic influences on the developing brain and long-time trauma that it causes. So, having said that, let me go to my screen share. And here we are. Web Infant Mental Health, a Global Perspective. Now, infant mental health, friends, is also called early childhood mental health. Essentially because it concerns itself with the developing capacity from birth to 6 years to experience, regulate, and express emotions, to form close relationship and to explore the environment and learn, all in the context of the family, community, and cultural expectations for young children. So you see, the current definition of infant mental health borrows very heavily from the early works of the analysts who spoke about the importance of family and the importance of attachment in child development. Let's look at some critical aspects here. Optimal social and emotional development of infants, toddlers, and very young children in early relational contexts. I emphasize the whole issue of the relational context, such as what Bowlby referred to as attachment relationships, early relationship development, parenting and family systems, caregiving, early childhood environments, communities and cultures. Now, if you look at the global scenario and if you look at displaced populations, migrant populations, and you look at the UN statistics, or if you looked at the statistics on armed conflict, or you look even with the COVID scenario in terms of the internal migration that has occurred in India, which some people compare to the migration, the great migration that occurred during the partition, and children in institutions, children who cannot be sent home. What has this really done to early relational contexts, particularly in our situation today, in the context of this seminar, to really young children, even more so with young children who have special needs? You remember I had spoken about Amit's reference to early brain development and the fact that neuronal cytoarchitecture occurs maximally within the first 3 years of life, and how early experiences almost get under the skin and shape the brain, and therefore how important attachment relationships between the infant and caregiver is critical to healthy development. And it's in this context that there is so much of work and preoccupation with adverse childhood experiences, to the extent that their exposure to chronic trauma has been studied in terms of MRI studies of how they affect uh, the those critical parts of the brain that control emotions. And this whole dandelions concept uh, of how genes are resilient or not, and how some children grow up to be resilient and others don't. The service to the research gap. A study in 2003, and here we come to really the global scenario. If you look at articles on infancy from 1996 to 2001 from major international journals, it reported that the meager 5% of the articles came from parts of the world other than North America, Europe, or Australia. The same group of authors did a follow-up study, and they reviewed articles published between 2002 and 2012, where only 2.3% of articles were published in 11 years, and including data from the ELMIC countries where 90% of the world's infants live. So look at the skew and the gap in the whole service to research data that really characterizes scholarship in the area of infant mental health. Because of this, in NIMHANS, some years ago, we started a perinatal psychiatry clinic under Dr. Prabha Chandra, who is a professor of psychiatry. And the services provided in this clinic range from pre-pregnancy counseling for women with psychiatric disorders, to handling accidental exposure to psychotropic medication, to psychiatric problems in pregnancy and the postpartum, and postpartum psychiatric disorders, mother-infant bonding assessments and interventions, lactation problems, and so on, with special emphasis on postpartum psychiatric disorders in as much as they impact on mother-infant bonding assessments and interventions. Now, this service has a dedicated 5-bedded mother-baby ward. The mother-baby services are quite common in the NHS in the UK. And it's only recently that it's gaining currency in South Asia. And I present this to you as a possible consideration for those from Sri Lanka and Nepal and Bangladesh and hopefully Pakistan and Afghanistan, who are logged in, to really consider, even in a small way, and ours is only a 5-bedded mother-baby ward, where there are specific interventions for mother-infant bonding disorders. Now, this is a very big study with a group in Liverpool, and it's called the BCHADS, or the Bangalore Child Health and Developmental Study, which is looking at early psychosocial predictors of child mental health. And it's a longitudinal study of shared and distinctive risk and protective factors in the UK and India. The perinatal group addresses itself to the kind of research that you see here. Attachment style and mother-infant bonding and social support in women with postpartum onset of common mental disorders. Exploratory study of mother-infant interaction and infant mental health in the context of mothers with psychiatric illness. Mother-child interaction, relationship of well-being in mothers with psychiatric illness and child's cognitive development. So you see the kind of subjects and contexts that can be covered in one part of infant mental health, namely that part that deals with perinatal issues and those mothers with young babies who have psychiatric disorders. Then, based on all the early work that was done with culture and with family and with parenting and with child rearing across the world, came the diagnostic classification of mental health and developmental disorders in infancy and early childhood. Initially, it was the DC 0 to 3, but we now have the DC 0 to 5. The DC 0 to 5 captures new findings relevant to diagnosis in young children and addresses unresolved issues in the field. It looks at prevention, diagnosis, and treatment by identifying and describing disorders which are not addressed in other classification systems, such as ICD-10 going into 11 and DSM-5. The whole idea being that can we have a system that points the way to effective interventions? I would like to introduce you to what is new in DC 0 to 5. It includes disorders occurring from children from birth to 5 years. The criteria has been extended to younger ages when appropriate, including in some cases to the first year of life. Several new disorders have been included, such as relationship-specific disorder of early childhood, dysregulated anger and aggression disorder of early childhood, atypical social communication emergent neurodevelopment disorder. Now, the DC 0 to 5 retains the multi-axis system, allowing optimal consideration of context in assessment and diagnosis, and most of the axes have been revised substantially. A couple of years ago, I found a very interesting manual which very few people are aware of and very few people have used. And this is called the Psychodynamic Diagnostic Manual. Now, this has a section on adults. It has a section on adolescents. The second version, PDM2, is out now. It has a section on the elderly. Now, the Psychodiagnostic Manual is a taxonomy of people. It is not a taxonomy of diseases, unlike DSM or ICD. And this is the beauty of Psychodynamic Diagnostic Manual, which has a special section on infancy and early childhood, which include a discussion on developmental lines, on issues of continuity. Now, I draw your attention to the concept of homotypic and heterotypic continuity. A child, a very young child, an infant, who has preschool onset of ADHD will have heterotypic continuity, Because when a preschool child with ADHD becomes a pre-adolescent, an adolescent, or a young adult, the ADHD can fragment into either residual inattention or impulse control problems or mood disorder or substance abuse disorders or some forms of personality disorders. So this is called heterotypic continuity. Whereas a very young child with autism or a very young child with separation anxiety disorder will have homotypic continuity to uh, adolescence and adulthood, where some manifestations of social anxiety continue. Now, the psychodiagnostic, dynamic diagnostic manual gives a better definition of the quality of primary relationships of the child and caregivers, emphasizing on family systems and their characteristic relationship patterns, including attention to attachment and their possible relationship to psychopathology and normative development. I would urge you, friends, to look at the psychodynamic diagnostic manual. There is a separate section on childhood and adolescence, which I'm not covering today. I'm only talking about the special section on infancy and early childhood, and I will do so by comparing it to DC 0 to 5. So here is the comparison. In DC 0 to 5, Axis 1 is the infant's primary diagnosis. Axis 2 is the relationship disorder covering parent-child relationship and functioning thereof. Axis 3 is physical, neurological, developmental, mental health diagnosis. Axis 4 is acute, chronic psychosocial stressors. And Axis 5 is current functional, emotional, developmental level. In similar lines, the psychodynamic diagnostic manual in Axis 1 is primary diagnosis. Axis 2 looks as functional, emotional, developmental levels, that is, the degree to which the infant has mastered the developmental levels expected for that age bracket. Axis 3 is regulatory sensory processing profile of the child. Axis 4, which characterizes the caregiver, family, and environmental patterns. And Axis 5 describes other medical and neurological diagnoses. So when we assess infants or preschoolers in the clinic, if you use a combination of DC and the psychodynamic diagnostic manual, you can see how elegantly, richly, and evocatively you can actually gain a wonderful assessment of the kind of issue and concern that the caregivers have brought the infant with. Now, there's a whole list of scales which look at infant behaviors and symptoms. They look at toddler social emotional assessment. They look at a child behavior checklist, which is Achenbach's list as applicable to very young children. There are screening questionnaires. There are, of course, specific questionnaires for autism. There are parent focus interviews. There are working model of child interviews. There are preschool age and the age brackets that it covers and the domains of use that it can be put to and the nature of questionnaire has been put here. There are also observational scales and individual child related scales. So there's a whole menu from which you can select. The point is more of what kind of work does this give rise to. So let me take you globally of the kind of research that has come out in infant mental health. Look at this comparison of ICD-10 and DC 0 to 3 in infants, toddlers. This was published in Child Psychiatry and Human Development. Children received both ICD-10 and DC diagnoses. The most common ICD-10 diagnoses were oppositional defiant disorder, hyperkinetic disorder, and emotional disorders in infants. In DC3, nearly half the children could not be coded adequately. They go into other disorders, such as sleep behavior disorders, followed by feeding behavior and regulation disorders. So it appears that both classificatory systems are needed in infant, toddler, and preschool psychiatry. And there is a good concordance of the two systems for feeding, sleeping, adjustment, and attachment. Whereas ICD-10 diagnoses like hyperkinetic disorder and oppositional defiant disorder are not adequately represented in the DC. There was a very famous Copenhagen child cohort study. I present to you the kind of papers that have come out of this study. They basically looked at prevalence of mental health problems in children who are very young, just 18 months of age. Look at the spectrum. Infancy predictors of hyperkinetic and pervasive developmental disorders at age 5 to 7. Infant behaviors are predictive of functional somatic symptoms at age 5 to 7. Early predictors of eating problems in pre-adolescence, a prospective birth cohort study. So what you can therefore do is, going back to the previous slide, if you look at studying infants using ICD-10 or DC or the psychodynamic diagnostic manual and follow them up, you are likely to come across really elegant data on what you see in infancy and what happens when they cross the age of 6 and proceed into childhood, and what kind of infant behaviors therefore predict childhood and adolescent outcomes. I now want to take you through some of the global developments and the systems that have come into place to really strengthen the work on infant mental health. The International Marseille Society is a society for perinatal health. It's an international interdisciplinary organization dedicated to supporting research and assistance on prenatal and postpartum mental health for mothers, fathers, and their babies. The World Association for Infant Mental Health is a not-for-profit organization for both scholars and practitioners. It promotes mental health and well-being of infants and toddlers and their families and caregivers, emphasizing the unique environmental and cultural context. So infant mental health seems to be very strongly embedded globally in unique environmental and cultural contexts. Therefore, child rearing practices, notions of childhood, parent-child relationship in different cultures, beliefs about infant behaviors is really the focus globally of this organization. One of the most prominent proponents of infant mental health comes from the Michigan Group. The Michigan Association for Infant Mental Health is also a not-for-profit organization focusing on infants and toddlers. And the Infant Mental Health Journal is the official journal of the World Association, though the copyright is owned by this Michigan Group. This journal was created by the Michigan members almost 40 years ago. So you see, research, scholarship, and writing and publishing in infant mental health is not new. It's almost 40 years old. And the Alliance for the Advancement of Infant Mental Health is an international organization whose mission is to build and sustain a reflective, skilled, and culturally responsive relationship-based workforce. So again, you see that the Alliance's focus is on cultural responsibility and a work on infant mental health, which is strongly embedded in a relationship base, going back to the entire work of the pioneers, Anna Freud, Bowlby, Winnicott, all of whom spoke about infant mother bonding and attachment dynamics there. So this has been a sustaining thread throughout, epigenetics and methylation notwithstanding. This is not to belittle the epigenetic and the very, very extensive work that is going on gene processes as well as functional MRI studies. This is not to belittle this work. This is just to recognize that somewhere we need to build the bridge between the evocativeness of the early relationship and cultural focus in the global lens that was used for infant work and the current work in epigenetics, genetics, and imaging studies. The journal also places an emphasis on applied research and informs policy and practice in the field of infant mental health. And it publishes research examining preschoolers' socio-emotional development in relationship contexts, early childhood mental health, and all the work published in this journal reflects robust use of infant and early childhood mental health perspectives. Here's something very interesting about this journal. Look at the special issues and sections of this journal. Recently, there was a call for paper. Topic: infant and early childhood mental health in the context of COVID-19 pandemic. They have a section called The Voices of COVID in the special issue. Now, the World Association of Infant Mental Health, other than the journal, also publishes something known as Perspectives. And so this is a call which ends on October 1st, and the infant mental health, the call ends on December 1st. But let me take you through some of the other issues, past issues. Look at this home visiting model. The Michigan Infant Mental Health Home Visiting Model. Community delivered infant parent psychotherapy improves maternal sensitive child caregiving. Evaluation of the Michigan model. Infant mental health home visiting therapist, reflective supervision, self-efficacy in community practice. Infant mental health visiting therapist, fidelity to the Michigan model in community practice. Or look at the whole set of special issues. Special issues on intersections of infant mental health with reproductive health and justice. Special issue on new directions in infant and childhood home visiting. Lessons from tribal maternal, infant, and childhood programs. Special issues, boys at risk, indicators from birth to 5. Special issue, new approaches to classifying issues of infancy. Special issue, early biopsychosocial development of boys. So you see gender, tribal populations, home visiting programs, all of this becomes niche areas that infant mental health can really address itself. Coming back then to clinical issues. You remember I started with what my colleague Amit Jha had said about infants who are exposed to early adverse events has a significant impact on mental health and affects all domains of development. Now, these early problems are expressed as regulatory behaviors in feeding, eating, dysregulated emotions, tantrums, and so on, sleep disturbance. And they have long-term consequences, as can be seen as behavior problems, impaired learning, impaired cognitive outcomes, and problems in relationships. Therefore, identification of early developmental outcomes by examining the concerns of parents on the one hand, recognizing that no single approach will have all the answers. So when we integrate developmental and psychodynamic approaches, they provide a conceptualization for infant problems and provide a framework for psychological intervention. How do we do this? Let me take you through this. I'm drawing very heavily from the work of a PhD scholar, Shweta Narayan, and this is part of a preliminary data. Let's just look at the ages and stages questionnaire. And if you look at just one case, forget the other cases, and look at in the ages and stages questionnaire, this child in communication, level 25, gross motor 10, fine motor 60, problem solving 30, personal social 45. The indicating that you need to provide learning and activities. You need to do further assessment in the area of gross motor. In the fine motor, development is on schedule. In problem solving, this child needs learning and related activities. And in personal social, the development is on schedule. So the ages stages questionnaire is in 5 domains, each of whom in the assessment you can quantify, and that gives rise to what is the kind of approach you need to take. In the same child, if you look at DC 0 to 5, this child has no primary diagnosis on axis 1. In the relational context, the child is probably at level 2. In the physical medical consideration, nil, and in psychosocial stresses, he has 1. The same child, if you look at developmental competence, the previous one looks at primary diagnosis and the context. This looks at developmental competence. The developmental competence for infants are in the areas of emotional, social relational, language and communication, cognitive, movements and physical. This child at the emotional level is functioning at age appropriate level. Social relational competencies are inconsistently present or emerging. Language competencies are inconsistently present. Cognitive is at an age appropriate level, and the movement is not meeting developmental expectations. So you can see that DC 0 to 5 immediately suggests to you that your interventions need to focus on social relational, on language social, and to some extent on physical. For the same child, when you go to the psychodynamic diagnostic manual, and there is no problem in axis 1, if you look at functional, emotional, developmental capacities, they appear to be fully mastered in an age appropriate way. The regulatory sensory processing capacity are present and more or less within the range of normal variation. Child caregiving and family patterns, there seem to be minor interference, and there are no other medical and neurological conditions. So when a comprehensive assessment is done for a child, starting with ages to stages, DC 0 to 5 on major axis, DC 0 to 5 on developmental competence, on psychodynamic diagnostic, you can then do also, let's say, a Bailey scale for infant and toddler development, where for the same case, you can get in various developmental domains the level that the child is in. And this, along with the quality of life score, will give rise to a program where you integrate and formulate a plan of intervention. So what do we do for this child? We say the primary diagnosis is nil. There are strain to concerning relationships, though the child is well adapted. There are no medical conditions. Psychosocial stresses are present. In terms of developmental competence, the child is okay in the areas of emotion and cognition. Fully mastered, regulatory sensory are present, but within range of normal variation. There is some interference in caregiving family patterns. The indicators in the relation context are worrisome, there's insufficient engagement, and therefore this child needs intentional communication, reciprocal responses from caregivers. And this was because child play was not consistent, the mother was insufficiently engaged. Similarly, in caregiving, relationship among caregivers is not adequate, and more involvement and interaction from caregivers is. So role allocation of the caregivers was not present. Similarly, in the other axis, if the child is functioning normally, or if there are some competencies that are inconsistent, you allow the child to play in terms of mimicking, getting the child to sit independently. And where emotional and developmental capacities are concerned, the child is able to sustain for long periods of time. But the child has to be put into different motor areas where the child has not. So this is the way that case conceptualization is done, and you plan interventions to reduce mechanical caregiver responses, increase physical contact, increase vocalization and affect gestures, telling them about reading of appropriate cues, incorporating support from the mother in handling the child, and play with others in mimicking and some motor activities. Finally, let me take you through some perspectives in infant mental health. Now, this was something that was published long ago, almost 3 years ago, and it says that any diagnosis, categorical or dimension, is inadequate to describe a child with sufficient complexity for clinical purposes. Nevertheless, parents, caregivers, and providers already categorize clinical presentations. Families functionally categorize behavior and physical problems as something that is either developmentally typical or of concern, and then further determine whether the concern is sufficient to seek help. Providers, on the other hand, also categorize clinical presentations as normative or requiring treatment. And these dichotomies exist whether or not categorical diagnoses are used to describe the clinical presentation. I'm saying these, friends, because DSM-5, ICD-10 are categorical, whereas the psychodynamic diagnostic manual is a taxonomy of individuals. It's not a taxonomy of diseases. Now, this brings us in infant mental health to a core philosophical question. If you look at infant mental health in the global village, and if you look at the major people who work and who invite people to debate on emerging infant environments, and if you look at the uneven tempo of change, and if you look at migration that I refer to and the kind of cultural chessboard which our cities are, if you look from traditional to innovative urban parenthood, and Triple P, which is from Australia, in fact has something known as a baby Triple P program. Or if you look at society's response to insecure environments and the child labeling diagnostic culture, or multiple parenting, or children growing up without parenting care, or children who do not have parents and are in the institutions. And do we really look at a taxonomy of children or a taxonomy of disorders? In an editorial, in the perspectives which the World Association brings, when they spoke about the worldwide burden of infant mental health and emotional disorder, and this was the report of a task force of the World Association, they said that mental disorders occurring in young children often go unrecognized, and prevalence rates are difficult to determine because of lack of awareness and difficulty in diagnosing. The lack of widespread recognition of disorders in infancy is concerning due to the unique positioning of infancy as foundational in the developmental process, with the potential for enduring deviations to occur in response to early trauma and deprivation, coming back to what I'd started with, adverse childhood experiences. Intervention approaches for young children require sensitivity to their developmental needs, and therefore global priorities need to address prevention and intervention in ways that our youngest world citizens, mark these words, youngest world citizens are assisted so that the impact of early trauma is mitigated. And it is for this reason that uh, I submit to you that we really need to look at a combination of taxonomy of children as world citizens and a taxonomy of disorders as a joint approach to really how we look at infant mental health. So this is what I wanted to share with you, ladies and gentlemen. I have taken you through the origins in culture and child rearing to the current preoccupation with epigenetics and gene methylation conditions. I've taken you through some of the major agencies and systems that focus on infant mental health through DC 0 to 5 and the psychodynamic diagnostic manual, and through how you use a combination of this to actually assess an infant and make a comprehensive diagnosis which helps you plan intervention and assistance to the infant and the family. Thank you very much. I am open to questions. If there are any, I see there are 25